where you are, or morning, we want to talk about a subject that we started to talk about or allude to last week. And last week during the webinar, we were talking about how can you identify opportunities for communication during this crisis. And we said that, you know, just because there's a crisis doesn't mean you should be quiet. You should continue to communicate so that your members or your clients can keep up to date with you. And we said that the crisis in itself presents an opportunity for you to communicate. And so the question that arises out of that is, how then do you start with this communication? And so what we want to look at today is, how do you do that? And what tools are available for you to be able to undertake the communication. But before that, let's just ask ourselves first, you know, why do we again remind ourselves, why again do we want to keep communicating? Michael, if you can just move to the next slide. So why do we want to start communicating? We want to communicate for various reasons. One, we want to communicate because we want to keep in touch with our clients and our members. We do not want them to forget us, and we don't want us to forget them. We want to keep there. We want to communicate because we want to retain a visibility or enhance it. So you must always be visible to people. As long as they can see you, they can hear you, then they cannot forget you. We want to exploit opportunities or even maximize them, because right now there are many opportunities that are available for us as businesses, as associations, as chambers, and we are in a position to maximize them. But like for instance, one of the opportunities that exists right now is to be able to offer trainings. Trainings are a great opportunity right now because people have time in their hands to listen and to focus and to practice what it is that you're teaching them. So this is a good opportunity for you to maximize and to exploit. Of course, we said the main goal is to make sure that you are always in the minds of your clients. You do not want anybody to forget you. You want them to be able to remember you over and over again and to constantly look to you for solutions, because you're the one that has been helping them before crisis, and now is a moment that you can also offer them wonderful solutions that will help them very much. So now we've looked at why we communicate. Why is it important to do that? So when we are communicating, exactly what do we talk about? So now you're communicating online. So what exactly are you going to talk about? Michael, the next slide. So when you're communicating online, what do you want to do there? First of all, what can you say online? Because you don't just want to go online for no reason. You want to go online because you want to, first of all, you could go online to do a detailed examination of a niche topic. Like for instance, what we are doing right now, we want to talk about building online tools. Under normal circumstances, this would probably not be something that you'd be interested in. But right now, people are interested in finding out, how do you engage online so that, and when you're there, what do you say? Because you can't just be there to do nothing. So how do you do it and what do you say? So you can choose a topic or an issue that is close to your members or your clients' hearts and now go and talk about it. You may want to talk about a discussion on current affairs. And this is an opportunity that presents itself depending on your situation, of course, your environment. The current affair could either be the crisis we are in, which is the most common, and people are starting to get wary of it. So you may want to get more creative and talk about something else. The biggest one that now is going on, at least in my circles, is online marketing or marketing in general. How do you market your products, for instance? So you may want to have a discussion on that issue, on that current affair of marketing in this kind of a situation. Also, the issue you talk about could be and should actually be related to what it is that you do. this is a moment for you online to do it-yourself tutorial online, depending on what it is that you offer, whatever services you offer to your members or to your clients, depending on whatever it is that you offer, then this is a moment for you to be able to explain to them how they can do something for themselves. And you can do a simple video clip. Now it's no longer, we all have smartphones, so all you need is to sit in a place where there's good lighting and make sure that your microphone works properly. And with your phone, you can be able to achieve a lot of things. The other thing that you may want to do online is to interview an industry thought leader. And we have thought leaders amongst us. Some of them are, it could be you, the association head, or it could be your members. So this is an opportunity to bring people together and provide them with platforms. Now, if you're in a business, you are in a position to provide a platform for your clients to communicate. If you're already in an association, this is your moment to make your members shine. Tell them, I'm hosting a webinar for instance, the IT sector, and I want you to come and actually talk about this particular subject during my webinar. And this is coming, what's the advantage to you as a member? If you're in an association, what's the advantage to your member? It gives them visibility. It gives them an opportunity to make themselves credible and a source of information in that particular industry. So those are some of the things that you will be doing when you are there, when you're engaging with people online. Now, I want to just show a very brief video clip about something that you can do online, an event, or one of the things that you can do online, since we are having this very discussion. Michael?
Let's see if this will play.
Okay, are we having trouble playing the clip?
We are, but I think it might go. Let me pause for a minute.
All right, so as Michael is trying to sort that out, we are saying that, so because what I want us to see is an example of something that you can do online. So this morning, of course, I was attending webinars. That's what I'm spending a lot of my time doing. And in this webinar, it was a webinar for women in business, and women, especially in the events industry, which is somewhat what I'm engaged in, were asking important questions. Like right now, there's a lockdown. What can I do about my events? There's the issue of social distancing. There's the curfews and all these things. How can I continue to be in business? And one of the things that the presenter said that I found very interesting was that this is your moment if you're to change how you do things. So let's see how CIPE has changed how they do things, because this is a video clip about CIPE.
Great.
All right, it seems, Michael, we don't have the audio for that.
Ah, okay, good to know. Do we have it now?
Absolutely not, still not.
Okay.
All right, I guess we could just share this online and get people to have an idea of what it is that I'm talking about. But what this is, if I may just talk about it, is a webinar that's being held.
Let me know if this works, okay? One more try.
Sorry? One more try.
My name is Olade Kone. I look forward to seeing you at the SME Bootcamp May 14th and 15th. We know SMEs are the engine of growth for most economies. So join the conversation about how to survive as an SME during the pandemic and how to reposition your SME for growth as we recover from the pandemic.
My name is Vigrant Gansevoort and I'm from South Africa. We look forward to seeing you on the 14th and 15th of May for our exciting SME weekend. Don't miss it.
Welcome to our session. I'll be sharing my life experience with you on issues when it comes to small business management, especially in the area of integrity and accountability. Thank you, and I'll be...
Hi, this is Baba Jackson from Rainbow Consult in Accra, Ghana, and I will be attending the SME Bootcamp on the 14th and the 15th of May 2020. Talking about how SMEs can stay alive in this time of COVID-19 without letting go of their ethics and ethics. Don't miss out. See you later.
All right, thank you very much, Michael. So that's a brief video clip for an event that's happening later this week. And the event is actually it's actually happening this week, 13th and 14th, 13th and 14th. So it's today and tomorrow and the day after. And the event is a webinar for small businesses. Not for small business, but it's a webinar for anti-corruption, business ethics. And it's bringing together organizations or countries, different countries, 5 different countries will be represented in that particular event. So this is an opportunity it's really a way that CIPE has changed the way they're engaging with partners, such that they are utilizing what the situation as it is to continue serving and offering services to members and also to their clients. And that is what I want us to do. So now, how do we get to that point where we are actually going to be able to do an online webinar? What do we need for such kinds of things, or to be able to communicate? Michael, if you move to the next slide. So what tools do we use for online communication? There are numerous tools. The main tool is called an app. And an app simply is just a computer program that usually is meant to run on a mobile device. Some applications that we use are applications that will require internet. For example, WhatsApp, Skype, Zoom, RingCentral, and such. There are other applications that you have in your mobile phone or even in your computer that do not require internet. Simple applications such as your SMS app, it doesn't require internet. So there are other applications also, like for example, your fitness app or your health app may not require internet for it to run accordingly. So when we are working online, what we actually use are apps, and we use apps in various ways. So you can use apps for communication, like for example, what you're talking about today, the webinars. You can use apps to help you collect data. You can use apps to help you track your members' activities. You can use apps to track media activities and all these kinds of things. So there are all sorts of apps, but for the purposes of this webinar, we're going to be looking at apps that help you to communicate widely amongst your audience. In essence, we're looking at apps that actually replace events, because most of the activities that we undertake in associations and at the chambers are actually events. So what apps are these, and how can we utilize them so that we are able to actually move forward? Now, before we talk about the apps themselves, Michael, moving to the next slide, we need to look at what do you need to think about. The questions that you ask yourself when you are selecting an app. The first question that you need to ask yourself is, who is your target audience? So your target audience is very important because, like we've said, there are certain apps that will use internet and others that will not use internet. So you need to ask yourself, whom do I want to talk to? Depending on who you want to talk to, you start to decide which tool is going to be useful for you. You need to think about the user friendliness of the app. Again, it depends on how tech savvy your audience is. Sometimes your audience is very tech savvy. Sometimes they have no idea. They just fumble onto the phone or on their laptops and they get something done. How they get it done, they have no idea. And majority of our audiences are usually in that category where they just fumble and finally it works and they are very happy that they were able to log in there. So you need to look for an app where if people fumble, they will be able to land there and they can be able to access your participate rather in your presentations. Now, the internet bandwidth. This is very important because there are certain apps for especially communication, online conferencing, webinars, and conferencing that require very huge bandwidth. Bandwidth here, we are talking about data. How much data do you need? So some require more bandwidth, in which case then it means that it will be more expensive for your users, or they may just be able to completely and be unable to access it altogether. You need to ask yourself, what do you want to do with this app? So you will, because the apps come for different uses. There are some apps that are very good for webinars, just a simple webinar. There are others that are very good when you want to send presentations. There are others that are extremely good when you want to do live streaming. And there are others that bring all that together. You need also to ask yourself, how many people can this app accommodate? Because not every, like the apps have limits. They cannot accommodate beyond a certain number. Again, also, because most of the apps are not free also, you need to make sure that the apps you're looking for can give you the economies of scale. So you don't get a very expensive app and you're using it for a very simple, activity that it makes it more expensive to undertake. Then, of course, you need also to think about the storage resources. Again, here we are thinking about the equipment, the hardware of your members, of your clients, and also of yourself, for you, the host. What kind of hardware do you need? You need a laptop that has, a certain very high speed, such that it becomes impossible for you to utilize that app? Or will that app, when people log into the app, will they be told that this app unfortunately cannot be supported on the mobile phone or something like that? So you need to be thinking, considering these factors when you're thinking about what app you're going to use. Now, I want to emphasize especially on the issue of the target audience, because the target audience is the one that eventually or actually ultimately decides what it is that you're going to do. When your target audience is unable to reach you, it doesn't matter how good whatever kind of information you have for them, if they cannot be able to get it. So the target audience is ideally your number one concern. Now, the target audience also determines a lot of things. They also determine the time. At what time are you going to be using this app? For instance, we could just be asking ourselves right now, why does CIPE Africa host webinars at 4 p.m. in Nairobi time, or 2 p.m. Nigeria time, or 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. in the US? So we may want to start asking ourselves questions like that. So again, it's important. The target audience is it's a very important person to think about. The other part, as far as I want to emphasize on, is the issue of the user friendliness. An app will usually have two sides, and we're going to talk about that in a short while. It will have the admin side where you are the host, and it will have the end user side where you are, just using it. For instance, this evening, Michael and I and Ryan are on the admin side, which means we are able to see a few more things than the rest of you can see. We are able to control a lot of things, but you are on the user side. So you may find that some apps are very difficult to use from both sides. So you want to make sure that the app that you choose is working from both ways. Michael, the next slide.
Sure, and Grace, do we actually want to stop here and facilitate some questions? We actually have a poll for everybody to answer as well. That's 3 questions just to get a better sense of the type of apps that you may be using and what is important to you. So let me launch this poll for everybody. And while you answer this poll, you can also raise your hand using the Ring Central app if you have a question, or type your question into the chat box, and we can facilitate a little Q&A. Can everybody see the poll? Okay. So I have a question for you, Grace, while this poll is answered. What is your understanding of like communications at this very moment? And when organizations try to break from just talking about COVID responses, have you seen that that's had a positive reception, or have you found that people only want to talk about like types of responses to COVID?
Right, that's a very good question. So if I can begin with the second part of that question, is that in my experience right now, the audience is getting very tired of the COVID issue, and they are preferring now to talk about, look at how do we get through this, or what happens past this. So that's becoming more popular amongst the audience, and that's something that we have to get creative about. But even more importantly is that people are starting to talk about what shall we do after this? What happens? What's going to be our new normal like? And the concerns now are around re-strategizing businesses. How do you re-strategize your current services so that you can be able to continue being relevant during, right now, and also post-COVID, or rather the new normal? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great, thanks. We also have a question from Jesse Mariah. His question is, how can you engage people who are outside of Nairobi, perhaps other counties, given the fact that they may not be enlightened on the various apps?
Okay, that's a very good question because it's talking about internet penetration, bandwidth, and of course, geographical distances. And one of the things that I have found out is that, and if you look at the statistics of mobile phone penetration in Kenya, I think about 70% of Kenyans already have a smartphone. Most people, at the very least, are able to access WhatsApp. And this is the interesting part. If somebody can access WhatsApp, they can access Zoom. For instance, just a simple app, Zoom, because it's the simplest, it's a small app, it doesn't require a lot of resources, and it's very user-friendly. So one way that you want to communicate with people outside Nairobi, or people that are not in areas that are very with a lot of bandwidth and such kinds of things, is WhatsApp. They're there. WhatsApp, people are on WhatsApp constantly. So you'll be able to reach them. And you will be surprised also that in the counties, excuse me, people are embracing Zoom a lot and other online platforms. I know that because I speak to very many chambers that are not in Nairobi, and they are very excited to be on such. So yes, WhatsApp is your entry point. Once you're on WhatsApp and you're able to get them on WhatsApp, then move quickly to finding out their capabilities of being on Zoom and other online platforms that are available.
Great. And then we also have a question from Lars. How do we keep people engaged and manage virtual communication fatigue that many may already be experiencing?
Very relevant question, because it's happening already. We've been on lockdown for several weeks, whichever part of the world you are in right now. And yes, people are experiencing fatigue at the moment. So the way to do this is to change the way we do our webinars. That's number one. You need to find a different approach. So you may want to consider short video clips. You may want to consider a video or webinars from a different perspective. So one of the things I have seen, for instance, people doing, we have a concert that we are attending this Saturday. It's about equality. I'm attending it on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. That's why it's going to be streamed live. So you may want to look at another approach of how you can present your material, because webinars are becoming tired, I agree. But also there are certain subjects that are very serious. So you cannot do a concert, for example, on algorithms, for instance. So you may want to consider, changing the way you present your material so that you make it more inclusive. Of course, whatever it is you're doing, you need to make it shorter now. We can no longer be having the 1 hour, 2 hours sort of meetings. The shorter it is, the better it is for everybody.
Great. And then final question, how do you, and you just spoke on this a bit, how do you ensure people attend webinars?
Oh, good question. I like that. One, you must market. Publicity, publicity, publicity. So a lot of the people on this webinar will tell you I sent them messages last night, and just before the webinar started, I sent them another text message to say the webinar is starting at this point. Also, you must make sure that you give people something to come and look forward to. In this webinar, we are giving out something. We should have said that at the beginning. In this webinar, we are going to be giving you, a template that you can use to help you with your online communications after this. You want also to make sure that people feel that they will have an opportunity to participate. Like, for example, the polls that we're doing right now, the question and answer sessions. Also, make sure that the topic is interesting. And I'm just preempting what I'm about to say. But those are some of the things that you're going, you look at to make sure that people attend your webinars. But then most importantly, make sure that you're giving people information that is relevant to them. No need to repeat things that people know, and no need to bore people on things that they're not interested in, or technical matters, basically, yes.
Great. Thank you, Grace. So our poll is in, but we don't have any results, but I will share the poll just in case anybody wants to see what the questions were. We will have to figure that out on our communications end for next time. But great, Grace, would you want to continue and talk about some of the kinds of apps that people can use?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please. Let's go to that. Perfect. All right. So we have talked about apps and apps and apps. That's what we've been talking about. And so one of the things that we said, your main tool, once you've decided I'm communicating online, when I am online, I'm going to be, talking to people because I want to maximize the opportunities. I want people to remember me. I want to stay in touch with them. I do not want to be forgotten. And I want to continue delivering services to members and to my clients. And you already know what you want to do online. So you want to engage them. That's the reason you're going to be communicating with them. You want to give them, new perspectives. You want, teach them something new. And you've decided, this is my tool. My tool for online communication is an app. So what kind of apps exist? There are several apps. Let me say that right now there are so many. I'm sure even in your phones, like every time you get an invitation to our webinar, you're probably going to be linking into a new app. So I'm just going to talk about a few after this, or rather after this webinar. We are going to be sharing, Michael and I will be sharing a list of online apps that you can utilize. That's one thing that will give you. Over and above that, I will be available to help you, to train you on how to use some of these apps. This is why there's the issue of the training, because I said the app will have two parts. It will have the user end and it will have the admin end. It's very different when you're a user and very different when you're an admin. When you're admin, you're the one who is hosting the meeting. So there are certain things that you must know. so that you're able to make sure that you run the webinars correctly. So examples of online apps, we have, of course, number one, we have Zoom. That is very popular. It's quite easy, especially I know in Kenya it's become very, very popular. And we use it for many things. Zoom is for meetings, for live streaming, for trainings, and the cost is just about that. These are estimated costs. They tend to vary depending on which website you look at. Then we have, of course, RingCentral, what we are using today, which is mostly used for meetings and trainings. GoToWebinar is very interesting. It's a very stable app. It gives you very high quality video clips and audio. But you do need to be a bit, to be a bit more technically advanced to be able to use it, because the admin part of it is a bit, it requires a bit of technicality. You must really train yourself on how to use it. Then we have Webinar Ninja, a very popular one also, and especially for live streaming. Now, the thing about Webinar Ninja is that it allows you to have a very stable audio and very stable quality sound. It also allows you to automate your webinar. That is, you do not have to be there all the time. Like, you can do it before and then it automatically presents it. It also helps you to do analytics. So that's very good. Because at the end of the webinar, you can actually sit down and see who was there, what, how long were people at the webinar, what were they thinking, and such kinds of things, the questions and all that. Then we have Restream. Restream is an app that's very popular amongst the broadcasters and people who love to do live streaming. Like, it helps you to bring together people just the way Zoom would or any other app. But then the thing about Restream is that it uses very high bandwidth. It's good for multi-streaming because it allows you to put in your webinar. You can stream it to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, IG concurrently at the same time. So that's the beauty of it. So it allows you to have multiple platforms to tell your story, and that's very interesting. But of course, you need to be very well, you need to have excellent skills to use it. The other app there is Global Meet, which we have used before with CIPE. It's a very interesting one. I personally like it. It requires a bit, you need to have been trained on it a little bit. It's not as straightforward as the others. And then, of course, we have BlueJeans. The reason I put here BlueJeans is because BlueJeans has capacity for a lot of, the packages that BlueJeans brings has capacity for big meetings, like when you have really big meetings and you want to have a lot of, many people participating, and many people also using some on video, others just on audio, others as panelists, others not as panelists. It allows you that flexibility to have it there. Of course, the costs are also there. So we said, these are just, examples of apps that you're going to utilize, tools to help you communicate to your people. As you're thinking about these tools, think about your target audience. For example, right now, if you were to speak to your members or to your clients, what amongst the list, the two apps I have used, which one would you be using? Just think about it. Which one would you be using? Would you go for Zoom, for RingCentral, for GoToWebinar, for Webinar Ninja, for Restream, for BlueJeans, or for, of course, Global Meet? Now, the other factor here is the cost. Some of these apps are quite expensive. However, we have other apps that are free. Zoom, for instance, will be free, but you will only be able to use it for only 40 minutes, and you can have only a maximum of 100 people at the beginning. But if you pay, you go for the, you pay for the app, then of course it gives you more flexibility. When you go to the other apps that we have been using before, this entire excitement of online communication came in, like good old Skype. Don't forget about Skype. You can still use Skype for your meetings, your smaller meetings. Of course, Skype has its own challenges. Sometimes the connection is not as stable. The quality of sound may not be as good. So that may not work very well if you want to have, especially very long meetings, that may not work. And then there is the one we cannot forget, WhatsApp. I said at the beginning, if anybody has a smartphone and they're on WhatsApp, they can be on anything else. So WhatsApp, good old WhatsApp also should not be forgotten, because that's another way that you can be able to communicate. Of course, WhatsApp has its own disadvantages again, that sometimes the connection is not good, it's not very clear, but on the other hand, it's very good for spreading messages across the globe, quite literally, very, very fast. So those are some of the examples of the apps that you're going to be using. Now, when you're using the app, I said there are two sides to it. There will be the user, and there will be you'll be an end user, or you can be an admin. Now, when you're an end user, how do you use this app? First, you need, whenever you get an invitation, the first thing is to find out which app is being used. Now, I don't know whether you guys are a victim of this, but I am. I always go to the link 5 minutes or at the exact time of the webinar. If the webinar is happening at 9 a.m., that is when I open that message and click on the link. Then I find out it's a new app that I don't have. Then it takes another 10-15 minutes for me to figure it out and configure it. So when you're using the app, the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you find out which app is being used, download the app in advance where you need to, and then just, familiarize yourself with the app. And then right now, because the mode of communication is changing and we're all now online constantly, whether we like it or not, you may want to connect your Outlook calendar or your Gmail calendar with the webinars so that you have reminders constantly. Which brings me to the other part of how do you make sure that people attend? You must keep reminding them constantly, and we'll talk about that in just a while. Then there's the issue of being the admin. If you're the admin, the one who's hosting the meeting, we're saying that your work is going to be to make sure that you set up the meeting. That's number one. Secondly, you will want to send out emails. That's very important. Or it can, so I'll say email/text messages, because you can send WhatsApp messages, you can send SMSs, you can send messages on other apps that are very popular within your region. Then you will be the one doing the presentations, like Michael today. So you set up presentations, you make sure that we are able to watch video clips and do polls and be able to interact with people and stuff like that. You will also be the one who will be charged with giving us the analytics of the webinar. And of course, you have the very difficult job of controlling the webinar as it stays. So you make sure that you are admitting people. Most webinar apps will require that people come into a waiting room and then they can be admitted. So you want to admit them. You will be the one to remove the rogue participants if you have people who are misbehaving for whatever reason. You will be the one to record the meeting. You will be the one to mute and unmute people. Those are the rogue participants I was talking about. And sometimes you will have, of course, depending on your target audience, you will have the unenviable task of making sure that you assist people log in. When they are not able to get in, they will just call you, of course, and say, we are not able to log in, and you have to find a way of explaining to them how it works, how the app works. Now, for you to be able to be a good admin, then you need to be very familiar with the app. Like I said before, after we're done with this and you identify which app you want to work with and you want to set up for communications in your organizations, please feel free to get in touch with me. I have a team with me that can help you navigate those waters of administration of an app that you don't understand. They're tech savvy, they're available, and they're very easy to deal with, and they speak proper English, so that you'll be able to understand that communication will not be a problem. Now, once you now know about the app, you have you know what you want to talk about, you have your target audience, you know the apps that you're going to use. So now, how do you actually set up the webinar? So the first step for you to setting up the webinar is to settle on a specific idea. We said one of the things you could be doing when you're talking to people is, explaining, giving them information about a niche thing. So come up with a specific idea. That is very important. It has to be specific because you don't have time online, and you cannot keep people engaged online for no reason. for a long time. Secondly, you need to choose the right speakers. You need to ask yourself, who are the experts in this subject? Now, the right speakers could be anywhere. They could be internal. They could be people that you know are experts on the subject matter. They could be yourself, or it could be your clients or your members. So you need to get the right speakers. The right speakers are actually the key to you getting footfall, if I can call it that, to your webinar. Now, I say that because last week we had, in fact, this is about the specific idea. Last week we had a webinar that we live streamed on one of our pages in Niusline Media. And it was a webinar about marketing. The idea was marketing. And so we just promoted that webinar on our pages for about 4 hours. It was 4 hours before. We didn't even do it too early. We promoted it 4 hours before. But as soon as the webinar started, in just a few minutes, it was oversubscribed. The target audience was women. How can women market their products or their businesses during this time of a crisis? But it also had something to it, that the idea of the marketing was not just about right now. It was about how do you make a consistent effort so that whether or not when there is a crisis, you can be able to survive. Very nice idea. The speaker was an expert. She's an expert in her field. She's a marketer. She's done this for a very long time. She's not famous or anything. But by the time we were done with that particular webinar, we had 1,400 views on that particular clip. I went back on the Facebook analytics and looked at it, and I realized half of the audience was tuned in for the entire time, which is very rare for video clips and for live streams. But that's how good it can be, depending on how well you position yourself. So the right speaker, if I can just give an example of that, one of the other things that we have been live streaming, one of a program, again, it's mostly a webinar. It's also a webinar also, but what they do, the day we had a very interesting psychologist, it's called Frank Njenga, Dr. Frank Njenga, a very famous psychologist. I mean, there were so many people there on that webinar. That particular day, there were so many people on that webinar. By the time we were done, 2,000 views on the show. Interesting. Now, the right specific idea, the right speaker, that works. That's important for you to get. You must have the right format. Do you want your webinar to be a panel, or do you want it to be a single presenter? Do you want it to be a Q&A session, webinar sort of thing? You need to think about that. Very important, the next step is the publicity of the webinar. You need to ask yourself, how are you going to make sure that people know what it is that you're doing? There are, so now the key here is what we call multiple placements. So now you don't think about, now I'm doing this webinar on Zoom, so you just send something small on WhatsApp, do a small poster on WhatsApp and circulate it. No, you must get creative. Put it on WhatsApp, put it on Twitter, put it on Facebook, send it on text messages, call people. You must make sure that you have the right people in your webinar at any one point. You want, after that, to come up, of course, with a very good presentation, because you're not going to call people and then waste their time. You must have something for them to look at. And you want to think about a script. A script is going to guide you so that you don't forget what you're supposed to say. And also, you make sure that you say the right things and you give the information as it should. So right now, for instance, the screens that you're seeing is very different from what I am seeing. I am using my script, so which you're not seeing right now, but I could share with you my script after this. So the script helps me to remember what it is that I had said and the points, and of course, it helps me to deliver the webinar well. Now, after you have developed your script, you need to do a dry run. Now, you might be an expert in presentations. You know how to do these things. Dry run is a must. It helps you to do a few things. One, it helps you to understand the technology you're using, because unfortunately, technology can really be mean. On that particular day, that's the day your machine decides it is time for me to update Windows on that particular day. On that particular moment, and you're unable to run the webinar. So you do a dry run so that you make sure if there are any updates to any other apps that support your machine or your phone to happen, you're able to do that in advance. Also, it helps you to get confidence, to know how to speak to people. And let me tell you, having done webinars severally, it can be a very crazy thing. You feel like you're talking to yourself. You need to practice this, because it's not like the usual presentation where you have people watching you and everything. So you need to keep practicing so that at the end of the day, you're able to deliver it and don't think that you're crazy. Finally, most importantly, you must keep time. You must be early. So if the webinar is starting at 4, please be online by 3:45 at the latest. And that is very, very important. And with that, I bring my presentation to a close. We have looked at how to use online apps so that you're able to communicate. And we began, of course, by asking ourselves, why do we communicate? And we are communicating because we want to make sure that we exploit opportunities. We want to be visible. We don't want to be forgotten by our clients. We want to continue delivering services. That's the main reason why we're doing that. And we are saying, so now that we're online, what do we do there when we get there? First, we engage our clients. We offer them services. We can, have discussions on current affairs. We can do tutorial videos. We can provide them with information from industry leaders and such kinds of things. For us to be able to do that, we need tools. And our tool for communication online, especially as far as webinars are concerned, are apps. We've said there are various types of apps that exist, from Zoom to Ring Central to GoWebinar to Web Ninja, Restream, Global Meet, BlueJeans, Skype, and many others that you will see in the matrix that I have prepared that will be shared to you on email after this. When you are choosing your email, your app, we've said it's important that you think about your target audience. Who are they? What capabilities do they have technically? What kind of internet do they have? And why do you want to have that app? And of course, how many people can the app accommodate depending on your purpose? We've said when you're using the app, there are two faces. You can be a user or an admin. You're using, it's easy, just means you'll be able to use the app. Click on a link, enter a password, bang, you're there. Or if you're an admin, then you need to set up meetings and you need to be more conversant with the app more than that. And we have talked about how you set up a webinar. We've said it's very important that you make sure that you have a specific idea, you choose the right people to talk about it, come up with the right formula, make sure people know the webinar is going to happen, develop a presentation, have a script, do a dry run, and be early for your event. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Grace. That was a wonderful overview. And now, in your own words, we've been keeping time very, very well. We want to open up the floor for questions. We have a few down here in the chat box, which I can ask. But also, if there's a lull, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question in person. But the first question I want to get to, Grace, and if you've had any experience with this, what might go wrong during a webinar? And can you explain a little bit more about webinar bombers and what they do?
Yes, I'm laughing because I have gone through it before. It's one of those experiences that you have to overcome. So what could go wrong? Everything could go wrong. Let's start from there. And that's something I should have said. When you're preparing for a webinar, be prepared for things to go wrong. It's not a guarantee that everything will work 100%. Things might actually go wrong. So how do you do this? So the first thing that could go wrong is that you could be bombed. That's an external factor that you have control over. Now, when you are the host of a webinar, most apps allow you to control who is coming in. One way to control people who are coming in is that you ask them to sign up in advance. Then after they sign up is when you get them the link. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is when people come into the webinar, they're in a waiting room. A waiting room will be something like you're at the reception, you're waiting to go into the boss's office. So they could also be there. Then the other thing that when they're in the waiting room, as the host, you can control who comes in. But over and above that, the other way this happens is that when you are the host and you have all the people that you wanted to have on your webinar, you can lock the meeting. That's how you prevent such trouble. But yes, bombing is common. You also need to make sure that your passwords are good, and also you share the password and the information with the right people that you want to come into the webinar. So that's very, very important. When you're doing, that could go wrong. That is number one that could go wrong. You could get bombed. The other thing, of course, that could go wrong is that people may not attend. You have prepared all this material, you have done everything, and then people just don't show up. That could go wrong. So how do you mitigate against that? You're targeting your target audience. Make sure that you have invited people. Make sure that people have tried, they understand the app. You may want to call them, even to ask them, have you used this app? Do you understand it? Do you think it's good for you? Do you need help with it? Such kinds of things. The other thing that could go wrong, of course, is your connectivity. So on the day of the webinar, and this has happened to me before, you must make sure that you have strong, dedicated internet for that particular session. So for instance, you want to make sure that you have, you're connected. Usually they say you connect to the LAN because it's more stable, and that's guaranteed. It works very well. Or you may want to consider connecting to a dedicated device. Don't share the internet on that for that moment. Try not to share internet. That could also go wrong. Yes, I hope I have answered the question adequately.
Great. Okay. Well, we have another good question. What are some good tangible examples of webinars that chambers and associations could offer to their members? What are some of the most helpful and best ones you've seen?
Right. A good question also. One of the most, I've seen, the most helpful webinars I'm finding, going around are about issues of identifying alternative markets. I'm finding that to be very popular for businesses, because now things have changed and businesses must continue to operate now and after the new normal. They must continue to operate. So I'm finding such webinars to be very useful. But also other interesting webinars are around the sector-based webinars. Because you see, this entire situation, it cannot be handled as a block. There are all these things that we can handle as a block. Like, for example, things like budgeting, which is about the country or a county. We can talk about it, from that point. But in terms of the issues of for sectors to be, so that we can handle member sector. For instance, how are people in the hotel industry going to manage themselves right now? Or how do the services, consultancy people, how can they manage their situations right now? So that's it, sector-based or issue-based. Issue-based, anything to do with re-strategizing businesses, anything to do with re-strategizing, identifying new markets. That's becoming very, very popular because it's a matter of concern.
Great. Do we have any questions from the audience? Feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, well, we do have another question from Jesse. How do you use webinars for new business development?
Okay, that's a very good question. So the good thing about a new business, it's because usually it will be helping you to bring in new concept and identify a new market and stuff like that. So your webinars are useful, first of all, to help you generate, pass the information. That's the first thing. to build a new business, just to say that you're here and you exist. Now, the way I would recommend for you to do that, and I like that question because most of the webinars now that are happening are being held by organizations that already exist and they already have a customer base and stuff like that. But if you're you want to develop a new concept, or you're a new business and trying to get into the market, this is an opportunity that you can structure your webinar to actually give out information and introduce yourself to the market. So what I would recommend is, when you're doing a webinar and you're a new business, try to make sure the webinar can be heard far and wide. So don't concentrate just on the people that you will invite. You want to try and make sure that you get more people involved. How? By getting your webinar online. So you want to utilize other tools, online tools, social media, such as you can also utilize that opportunity to get a wider market. That way also it helps you to collect, to create a new audience and have a wider audience, perspective, basically to help you develop your business.
Great. And then Grace, you spoke about Skype and WhatsApp. How are businesses and associations communicating with their members using these tools?
Right. WhatsApp has always been a tool of communication for business associations with their members, mostly because it's easy, everybody is there, and it's easy to use, it's straightforward. It doesn't require a lot of bandwidth and everything. So chambers and associations have been using WhatsApp for a very long time. So that's not very new. Skype now, of course, was popular, more popular before we got COVID and everything. And they were mostly, now it's being used for meetings. It really have to be on Skype. But I realized that most people prefer, again, to just use a simpler app, a simple one like Zoom. It's more simpler, it's more straightforward. So the chambers, I see that they are preparing to go that direction. Of course, WhatsApp continues, but WhatsApp is mostly for passing written communication. Like if you have graphics or you have text messages, you have reports, it's better to send them on WhatsApp. But if you just want to talk, WhatsApp, Zoom, Skype, such kind of tools, they're the best to use for that kind of a communication as an association.
Great, thank you. And so we'll go to IM. You have a question?
Yes, I am following Grace, and she's giving us very insightful ways of communication, especially on the internet. But I have this question on the issue of the chamber, and we are so used, like in Kenya, to have real physical meetings, and now for the Chamber of Commerce, especially where I am in Kenya, West Pokot, how would she help a chamber like where I am in West Pokot to be able to have a packaged, easy to grasp way of making a webinar? Like, for example, when you want to have a board meeting with the directors, who, like, half of them have no idea about the internet.
All right, very interesting question, but practical actually. Most board, you might find that you have a group of people who do not have. So if you cannot be able to have a meeting online, you can have a meeting. You can have a teleconference. That's one option that you could have, where you bring, you talk, you have the conversations on phone, which is more expensive. That's one option. The other option that you may want to consider is the issue of, so this may be a bit tricky, is to bring people together and let them sit and then you train them on something. Again, like I said, most of the people that you have, regardless of where they are, I'm sure In West Pokot, people, your board members especially, might be on WhatsApp. So you may want again to consider using a tool like WhatsApp. Don't forget the good old WhatsApp, Skype, SMS, telephone calls. Please don't forget those things just because Zoom has come. Let's keep, remember those things, and then adopt our members and our target audience into it. Bring them on slowly so that they adopt it. So your telephone still exists. You may still want to have a teleconference, which is more expensive, and also it's limiting because you can only have certain people on a telephone call. So it depends on what it is that you're doing. If you're having, say, a small board meeting, it's not the full board where there are like 3 or 4 people, you could do a teleconference and that will still work. If you're having more people, you may consider, looking into other tools that may be of use to you.
Grace, do you have maybe a recommendation for a tool to use for a board meeting?
Yes, I do. The easiest, the most exciting for board meeting, without, if you're having many people, like more than 15, I'd say, and these people are on WhatsApp, please go to Zoom. That's the easiest because everybody can use it. The other one that I wanted to talk about is GoToWebinar. GoToWebinar is very interesting, especially if you're doing training. It works very well because it gives more power to the person who is talking. So if you just want to tell people things and go, that would work very well.
Okay. And then have you had any examples of organizations using these communications tools for networking opportunities, for maybe more collaborative conversation?
Yes. So what organizations are now doing, because of course it's important now to make sure that people, they go beyond their spaces right now, is an example of what I had talked about. Like you have a webinar, you bring in people together, then you get it also on other platforms, like on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. That is happening very much, and on IG. Also, the other thing that people are doing right now is to participate in the usual WhatsApp groups. People are still doing that. So that way they still keep being there. So yes, those are the tools that are very popular. Of course, and other free online tools, GoToWebinar, WebEx, and another popular one that I should have mentioned, the Microsoft Teams. It's very good because not only where you're using it, if you're using it in an office environment, it works very well. But if you're using it in for a wider audience, not work very well. But it works very well for where you use. So that's also very good.
You may have cut out at that part, Grace. Can you repeat that about Microsoft Teams?
Michael, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Great. Do you have another question?
Yes.
Okay. This is a good question. Can you talk about Facebook Live and maybe some other opportunities to share events with a broader audience, or even maybe discuss something like this event where it's recorded and then shared with a larger network?
Yes. Okay, so now we have there are various ways to look at this. So when you're holding a webinar, you just bring in a few people, like say 20, 50, depending on how many people you bring on board. But a lot of times you find that your message, you want it to reach far and wide, or you're looking for a wider audience. So what you want to do is identify a Facebook page or a Facebook platform that has the people that you're looking for. And this is important. You don't go to Facebook Live, just go to your page and, click on the record button and start talking and telling people what you want to tell them. You need to be strategic about it. How you're strategic about it is you must understand the audience on your Facebook page. Now, Facebook allows us to see the back end where you're able to tell, for example, majority of my audience are women or majority of my audience are men. So depending on whatever it is you want to say, you will go to the Facebook, you will want to place your webinar on a relevant Facebook page. If you do not have your own Facebook page, you may want to consider getting a Facebook page from another person, usually will be an influencer who has an audience and who has people, the particular target audience you're looking for. So Facebook Live is very good and it's very popular because it's easy to do, but it has to be done strategically so that you can achieve your objective. You just don't place it anywhere. Just don't do something on your Facebook. Doesn't work. Or on YouTube. You just place it there and hope that the right person will see it. You must think about who is on that platform. And again, these are the things that we are helping our clients to learn right now. So if you are in need of analyzing your Facebook page, we can help you do that. You could just go to the back end and we will show you how you can even analyze it yourself. And yes, Facebook Live is very popular. Depending on your target audience, another popular app is in Instagram. If your audience is in the millennial generation Z age group, then you want to go there. That's where everything is happening on IG. If you are on the generation X, Y's, Facebook works very well. Depending on how serious your subject is, you might even want to get onto LinkedIn. But the best thing that you can do for yourself is where you're able to connect your webinar and the outside world. That is basically something that gives you explosion in terms of reach and in terms of response to your subject.
Great. And one of the platforms you didn't cover, Grace, is Twitter. And fortunately, we have our own CIPE Africa Twitter expert with us, Ryan. Ryan, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with Twitter and the audience that you found is there and how they've responded?
Sure. So I think that Twitter is a good tool for kind of getting word out beyond just your normal followers. So there are some platforms like Facebook that's a little bit more focused on the people who are already following you, whereas Twitter has a much more natural ability for your followers to share what you're doing and for people who are not following you to see what's going on. So I think you can also live stream videos on Twitter as well, just like Facebook Live and Instagram Live. And then as Grace talked about in regards to when she was talking about business development and getting your webinar out on the internet so that other people who aren't directly invited can find out about it and join. Twitter is a good way to do that. I think that Twitter has a little bit more of an educated demographic. A platform like Facebook is more widely used by all demographics, whereas Twitter is a little bit more of a niche audience. People are more educated. They also might be more of like an influential demographic. They might be leaders or thought leaders or something like that. So kind of a similar demographic to LinkedIn, where it's a little bit more professional. So it can kind of depend on who you're wanting to target. If it's your SME who's in a third tier city or a rural area, Facebook might be more apt. Or if you're trying to target some of the business leaders in the capital city, Twitter might be something that is a better tool for reaching a platform like that.
Right. If I could add to that, Michael, the beauty about the webinars that we are doing right now is that, like I've said over and over again, you can have a webinar and still have it on Facebook or on Twitter, and also on YouTube. So that's the advantages to all these tools that we're talking about. They work together. They're sisters. They have to collaborate so that they work perfectly.
Great. And if you need inspiration on how to use Twitter well, I think actually looking at our CIPE Africa Twitter is a good place to start. Ryan does a great job with that. Great. In the interest of time, we're going to begin wrapping up. Does anybody have any closing questions? You can either unmute yourself or add something into the chat. Okay, well, I will first, before thanking Grace, plug that we will have more events of this type, speaking on communications, and hopefully you all will receive a invite to that. We will be doing it again here on Ring Central, and I hope that you'll be able to join us for that. At the same time, we'll be sending around a nice document that Grace put together today, which shows the different kinds of communications platforms that are available, what their cost is, and what their best uses are to her knowledge. So thank you, Grace, for putting that together. And we're hopeful that it will help you pinpoint which application is best suited for your needs and the audience that you're trying to reach and communicate with. Before hopefully we all get to go back to doing this once again in person, hopefully sooner rather than later. Grace, I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the work that you do for us at CIPE, and thank you for just everything that you shared with us today and your time. And you are incredibly accessible, and we appreciate you not only just joining us here, but also making yourself available to people after the webinar via email to help consult them on their needs. So thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy your day. Bye.